What exactly is being hidden, and who decided you were not allowed to know? Not a rough estimate, not a political talking point. $80 billion, and there is no itemized breakdown available to the public. No press conference explaining where it goes. No line-by-line accounting sitting in a government database waiting for you to find it. Just silence. Official, deliberate, legally protected silence. Think about that for a moment. Programs are being funded right now at a scale that dwarfs the budgets of entire countries, and the people paying for them have no legal right to know what they are buying. So what exactly is the black budget? The term refers to the classified portion of the United States federal budget, a financial shadow world that funds intelligence agencies, covert operations, and programs so secretive that their very existence was officially denied for decades. This is not a conspiracy label invented by outsiders. It is the actual terminology used within government and intelligence circles to describe spending that bypasses normal public disclosure. We are talking about billions of dollars allocated to programs that never appear in any budget document you can freely access. No line items, no agency names, no mission descriptions. Just money moving through systems deliberately designed to be invisible. And here is what makes this different from the theories you may have encountered elsewhere. Everything that follows in this video is drawn from declassified documents, congressional testimony, and verified government disclosures. This is not speculation. This is documented reality, and it is far more unsettling than any theory. Now, before anyone accuses this of being speculation or conspiracy thinking, let's ground everything in verified numbers. The United States government has partially disclosed intelligence spending figures over the years, and what those figures reveal is striking on its own. In the 1990s, total intelligence spending sat at approximately $26 billion annually. That number was already enormous. But today, that figure has climbed to over $81.9 billion. To be clear, these are not leaked documents or anonymous sources. These are partial disclosures pulled directly from official government releases, the kind of figures that only became visible after years of legal pressure and congressional reform efforts. And here is the critical word: partial. What has been disclosed is already staggering. What remains hidden behind full classification is something else entirely. So when we talk about the black budget going forward, we are building on a foundation of documented reality, not guesswork. A kind of institution the world had never quite seen before. The year is 1945. World War II has just ended, leaving behind a world shattered by unprecedented destruction. Cities reduced to rubble, millions dead, the old order completely dismantled. The United States emerged from that devastation not just intact, but dominant, the most powerful nation on earth. But power, as history always reminds us, comes with new enemies. And this new enemy was different. It did not march in open formation or wear a recognizable uniform. The Soviet Union represented something far more unsettling, an ideological rival with nuclear ambitions and global reach. A threat you could not see coming until it was already at your door. That fear, raw and deeply felt by everyone in Washington, created the political conditions for something entirely new. This was architecture, a deliberate system built to keep certain operations permanently out of public view. It was a quiet moment with enormous consequences. The Cold War was already casting its shadow across the globe, and the Soviet Union represented a threat unlike anything America had faced before. Traditional military spending could be debated publicly, but intelligence work demanded something different. It demanded invisibility. Congress began doing something that had no real precedent in American democratic history. They started approving money that was deliberately buried inside other budget lines, disguised as unrelated expenditures, invisible to public scrutiny. Defense appropriations bills contained funding that had nothing to do with conventional defense. Line items were vague by design, Through the 1950s and 1960s, this shadow funding system expanded quietly, almost invisibly. No single person held the complete picture. Programs were deliberately compartmentalized, meaning each agency, each division, each contractor knew only their specific piece. Even elected members of Congress, the very people constitutionally responsible for controlling government spending, were kept deliberately in the dark about where billions of dollars were actually flowing. This was not bureaucratic carelessness. This was intentional architecture. The system was designed from the beginning to ensure that covert operations could proceed without triggering the messy, inconvenient process of democratic debate. If nobody outside a small circle knew a program existed, nobody could vote against it. Nobody could demand accountability. Nobody could say stop. What emerged was a permanent structure of unaccountable power, quietly embedded inside the government, growing stronger with each passing decade and answering to almost no one outside its own walls. It revealed how completely a program of enormous scale and consequence could be hidden from public knowledge for years. It built machines that redefined what was possible. The U-2 spy plane is one of the most remarkable examples. Developed in complete secrecy during the 1950s, it could soar at altitudes exceeding 70,000 feet, far beyond the reach of any Soviet interceptor aircraft. From that height, its cameras captured photographs of military installations with extraordinary precision, giving American intelligence analysts an unprecedented window into enemy territory. The United States government denied its existence entirely. That denial held until May of 1960, when Soviet air defenses managed to shoot one down over Russian territory, and the public knew nothing, the SR-71 Blackbird. If the U-2 represented stealth through altitude, the Blackbird represented something almost incomprehensible, raw, unstoppable speed. Flying at over 3 times the speed of sound, it remains to this day the fastest air-breathing aircraft ever built by human hands. No missile could catch it. No interceptor could touch it. If radar locked on, the pilot simply accelerated and disappeared. It was developed entirely in secret at Lockheed's Skunk Works facility in California, a classified research division operating so far outside normal channels that most of the aerospace industry had no idea it existed. Engineers were given resources without restriction, timelines without political interference, and budgets without public debate. Early surveillance satellites complete this picture of classified innovation. The Corona program stands as one of the most audacious deceptions in intelligence history. Officially presented to the public as a civilian scientific initiative called Discoverer, it was actually photographing Soviet military installations from orbit, capturing images no spy plane could safely obtain. The first successful Corona mission in 1960 returned more photographic coverage of the Soviet Union than all previous U-2 flights combined. Film canisters were physically ejected from orbit and caught mid-air by specially equipped aircraft over the Pacific Ocean. The program remained classified until 1995, meaning an entire generation lived through the Cold War without knowing this capability existed. These technologies did not simply gather intelligence. They fundamentally restructured the global balance of power. Nations were being watched from space, their secrets stripped away by cameras they could not see, funded by money no one was permitted to question. The black budget had not just built machines. It had been used to violate the people it claimed to protect. Some of it was about something far more disturbing. In the 1950s and continuing into the 1960s, the Central Intelligence Agency ran a program called MK Ultra. The goal was to develop techniques for controlling the human mind, not on enemy combatants, not on foreign spies, on ordinary, unwitting American and Canadian citizens who had no idea they were being used as test subjects. People were dosed with LSD without their knowledge. Some were subjected to psychological torture. Some never fully recovered. For years, this was dismissed as paranoid fantasy. Then the Senate stepped in. Secrecy, once institutionalized, does not stay contained. The black budget funded operations that reached into the internal affairs of sovereign nations across the globe. In Iran in 1953, in Guatemala in 1954, in Chile in 1973, governments were toppled, leaders were removed, and elections were quietly manipulated. These were not the actions of rogue agents operating outside the system. They were sanctioned, authorized, and deliberately funded through budget channels designed to keep Congress uninformed. The architecture of secret spending made this possible. When money moves without oversight, accountability disappears entirely. Foreign populations experience the consequences of decisions made in rooms they never knew existed, by officials they never elected, using funds no legislature had knowingly approved. What made these operations particularly significant was not just what they did, but what they revealed about the system itself. The infrastructure being built wasn't temporary, it was permanent, and it was expanding in directions the public wouldn't fully understand for years. The attacks didn't just reshape American foreign policy, they reshaped the entire financial architecture behind national security. Fear, urgent and overwhelming, became the justification for expansion on a scale never seen before in peacetime. Emergency funding poured into intelligence agencies almost immediately. The CIA, the NSA, the DIA, and dozens of smaller organizations suddenly found themselves with resources that would have been unimaginable just months earlier. New programs were authorized, new divisions were created, and new contractors were brought in almost overnight. The black budget, which had already been growing steadily through the 1990s, entered a phase of acceleration that had no historical comparison outside of active wartime mobilization. Between 2001 and 2010, classified intelligence spending more than doubled. Billions of dollars funding operations that reshaped entire regions with no vote, no debate, and no public reckoning for the consequences left behind. Strikes were carried out in Yemen, Pakistan, Somalia, and other nations where no formal war had ever been declared by Congress. The legal frameworks justifying these operations were themselves classified. Targets were selected through processes the public was never permitted to scrutinize. When strikes occurred, official acknowledgement was rare. When civilians died, the numbers were contested, minimized, or buried entirely behind classification walls. Independent investigators and journalists documented casualty figures that differed dramatically from government accounts. Families in remote villages had no legal recourse, no forum, and no visibility. The entire architecture of accountability had been removed. It had constructed an invisible architecture of surveillance wrapping around the entire planet, touching the lives of billions without their knowledge. Following the September 11th attacks, intelligence agencies didn't just want to monitor known threats, they wanted to monitor everything. Programs later exposed by Edward Snowden in 2013 revealed the staggering scope of what the black budget had quietly built. The National Security Agency was collecting phone records from tens of millions of ordinary Americans. Programs like PRISM allowed direct access to data from major technology companies. Overseas, the infrastructure was even broader, intercepting communications across entire continents. None of this was publicly debated. None of it was publicly approved. It was funded through classified channels, authorized through secret courts, and hidden behind layers of national security justification. The modern black budget now funds capabilities that would have seemed like science fiction a generation ago. Consider offensive cyber weapons, lines of malicious code capable of destroying physical infrastructure, power grids, water treatment facilities, nuclear centrifuges, without a single soldier ever crossing a border. The Stuxnet operation, widely attributed to American and Israeli intelligence, demonstrated exactly this capability when it physically destroyed Iranian nuclear equipment using nothing but software. That was over a decade ago. What exists today remains classified. Artificial intelligence systems now analyze surveillance data at speeds no human analyst could ever match, processing millions of intercepted communications simultaneously, flagging patterns invisible to the human eye, and generating threat assessments in real time. These are not future ambitions. They are present realities funded through the same invisible budget architecture built in the shadows of the Cold War, now operating at a scale its original architects could never have imagined. Space has become the ultimate classified domain, the final and perhaps most expensive frontier of classified American power. Satellites orbiting silently overhead, directed energy weapons being tested beyond public view, and orbital surveillance platforms capable of reading license plates from hundreds of miles above the Earth's surface. These are not science fiction concepts. They are believed to represent some of the largest line items in today's black budget. At the center of this is the National Reconnaissance Office, an agency so secretive that its very existence was denied for years after its founding in 1961. Sit with that question. Over $81 billion spent annually. Spy planes, mind control experiments, covert regime changes, drone strikes in undeclared wars, mass surveillance programs, cyber weapons, and orbital platforms circling the Earth right now. All of it funded through mechanisms most citizens will never fully see or understand. This is not a fringe concern. This is not speculation dressed up as journalism. Every program discussed in this video left a paper trail, a Senate hearing, a declassified document, or a government admission that came years or decades too late. The discomfort you may be feeling right now is worth paying attention to, because the question this raises is not a comfortable one. Democratic societies are built on the idea that governments answer to the people who fund them. But what happens when a significant portion of that government operates in permanent darkness, accountable to almost no one? Subscribe and stay with us. Every government keeps some. The real question is, how much power should be allowed to operate permanently beyond public accountability, year after year, decade after decade, with no meaningful check and no public reckoning? That is what the black budget represents at its core. Not just classified spending, but a parallel system of authority that answers to almost no one. The programs covered in this video are not theories. They are documented history, confirmed through declassified files, congressional hearings, and investigative reporting. And history keeps moving forward.